Okay, so Alien Earth is truly excellent in my opinion. This was obviously one of the shows that I was somewhat skeptical about, but also, for the most part, very looking forward to. I am a massive mark for this franchise. So when it was announced that this was on the horizon, and was on the horizon from the writer, director, and creator Fargo and Legion, shows that I haven't seen very much of, but I know how highly respected they are. I put a lot of faith in the idea that this was going to be a success and that there would be something interesting about something fresh that maybe the Alien franchise hasn't yet had. And across the board, this show has been a resounding success, not without failure, not without negativity in some aspects, but for the most part, this show is a resounding yes, a resounding success. And that is what the Alien franchise really needs right now to continue moving into this new era of films and TV shows and potentially games within this world, to announce itself as Romulus wasn't just a one-hit wonder. This franchise is now here to stay, and this can be a franchise that really in the 21st century and within 2025, within the 2020s, can continue to be a modern success. It doesn't have to be one bad one, one good one, one bad one, one good one. It needed to have this following on from Romulus to prove that this franchise can be continuously successful in a way that it hasn't really since the 1970s, 1980s. So the show begins with this sort of pop-up text screen on a computer about how there are three different types of immortality. There are cyborgs, synthetics, and there is a new thing called hybrids. Now, synthetics are artificially intelligent beings who have no semblance of humanity. Cyborgs are humans who are infused with some sense of technology. And then hybrids is this new thing that the show is introducing, which are humans who have essentially died and then their consciousness has been ripped from them and put into a new being. And so they are artificially intelligent with human consciousnesses. The central thesis of the show surrounds this idea that ultimately the strongest of all these beings is the one that can rule with the heart and can rule with the head. And the show goes on to explain how essentially any intelligent life can be friend or foe. It simply depends on how you perceive it and how you treat that intelligent life. Do you treat it as a captor and captured, or do you treat it as a friend and an equal? I won't go into too much depth because there is no need to spoil it wholeheartedly, but you can probably just from that thesis examine maybe where this show is heading over the course of its 8 episodes. In terms of the writing, these themes that the show is exploring are written to the absolute T and absolute max, and a lot of the characters are written extremely well, especially considering the majority of the cast is actually adults who are playing down. They are playing it as if they are kids. So the main characters such as Sydney Chandler, who plays Wendy or Marcy, the other characters, Smee, Slightly, Curly, Jane, all these characters, they are essentially all children. I would say that this cast has a very difficult job of essentially making you believe that this adult is really a child. Say they succeed in numerous ways. Each character feels individually successful and individually like their own child. In each way, each character sort of embodies a different aspect of what it means to be a kid. Some of them are more family focused, some of them are more friend focused, some of them are loyal, some of them are competitive, some of them are willing to do bad to others to get what it is that they want. Some of them act out violently because they don't believe that they are being respected or they believe they're being lied to. Others are leaders, others want to be leaders. You need a strong cast to sell these child characters, and Sydney Chandler being the face of the show and being the face of these kids or kid actors, let's say, she's very good in this. My issue is that I don't believe she ever really puts a firm stamp on the character outside of the one trait that you get from about episode 4 or 5 onwards. Once you hit that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But other than that, I'm not really sure that she really pulls herself up to the level of a Kaylee Spenny or a Sigourney Weaver. She sort of puts herself as a main or a good third option to, or maybe even a fourth option if you're including Ellen Ripley from Alien Isolation. The rest of the supporting cast is pretty good. One of the actors, Samuel Blenkin, is probably my least favourite part of the show. He, again, is sort of playing down. He's essentially playing this Peter Pan style character where in real life he's 29, but he's essentially playing an adult who is like 15 and has been given $1 trillion to spend and can do whatever he wants. But in reality, I just actually found him to be quite annoying. Like, I wanted him to die by the end of the show. They want him to be a character that's on the level of Sidney Chandler's character in terms of intelligence, but also ego and arrogance, but a childlike ego and arrogance. But instead, it just comes off as incredibly, well, childlike, but not in the way that a Joffrey in Game of Thrones is annoying. The high-pitched voice is very annoying. The mannerisms in this very serious and grounded show sort of serve as a bit of like, everything is black and white, and then suddenly here he comes in with like pink and yellow in it. It's just sort of like, what are you doing here? Like, get out. I don't want you here. And I understand that the show needed maybe a bit of levity, but ultimately I think the show is probably a lot better if you just go with the sort of typical evil billionaire, although maybe thematically and narratively it doesn't work as strongly. But other than him, I think the rest of the supporting cast is pretty strong. One of my favourite performances is probably here in terms of Babou Ceesay, who is incredible in this, and I'm quite annoyed that he's a 46-year-old British actor and I've never heard of him. I've never seen anything that he's in. I didn't even know he existed, and he is exceptional in this. He, without saying very much, portrays this character who has lost everything, and therefore he dedicates himself to his work, and he takes it so seriously that he's willing to kill literally anything in his path to make sure that his work is a success. Plays the character of Mr. Morrow so well because when he is interacting with the kids, specifically Slightly and Smee, he is so good at manipulating them and making them believe that he is a friend and friends help each other. And yet, when he's acting opposite an adult and a character that knows they're an adult, he speaks with so few words and yet is so menacing, but also menacing in a way where I don't really know if he is a straight villain. I feel like he's more of an anti-hero, and he's an anti-hero with his own morals and his moral complexities, where he doesn't kill innocents unless they're in his way and unless it's necessary, but also he firmly believes that the people he has to kill, or the people who are at the top of his kill list, are enemies and are bad guys. And I will say it's very rare, in my opinion, that in the Alien franchise, the main interesting character in a property within this franchise is the man. It's very rare because usually the female heroine is so strong that they kind of just blindside you and they kind of just shove off whoever else is on screen. I think Spenny does that very well, and I think Sigourney Weaver does that very well. Sidney Chandler I do like, but I don't think she is the real strong performance in this. I think Ceesay is better, and also the other performance that I was a really big fan of, Timothy Olyphant, I also think is better. Timothy Olyphant, I would say, is like one of those actors where he just feels like a natural synthetic human being. Not to say that he is unemotional or he isn't funny, but he almost plays this like straight man with a roboticness. He's not necessarily stoic, he is more machine-like in his performances. If you told me that his character of Harlan Givens in Justified was a synthetic being, I probably wouldn't be surprised. He plays this science officer role so well as one who isn't intervening in basically anything that goes on in the show, because he thinks that anything that can happen, if he just stands back and observes, that's good for science. And it's good to just observe and survey and see what happens, and sees what happens when you don't intervene. And in some ways, I would even say that more than Ian Holmes' Ash in Alien, the character of Olyphant's Kirsch almost portrays the sort of pristine and perfect science officer in terms of they wouldn't intervene. They would be interested strictly in terms of what happens if you just allow things to happen. If you're just a passive observer and you just watch what happens. Ash in the original movie is constantly intervening. He's constantly getting in the way of the other characters. In this film, Kirsch does none of that. He's not interested in any of that. And I find that to be a very interesting character. It's a very interesting decision. There is an argument or a criticism to be made that you could say you have this great actor and you're kind of just not giving him very much to do. I would counter that by saying I think he will probably become more relevant in season 2. We're not reviewing season 2 yet, so it's a valid argument to make. The other major criticism I will have is that episode 5 serves as the obligatory flashback episode that every series that has 8 episodes has to have now. And it's fairly annoying because the pacing of the show up until that point is excellent, and then it kind of just grinds to a halt where we go back to the ship that crash lands on Earth and we see what happened before it crashes. And don't get me wrong, it's a very good episode. I think the guest actors who are in that episode are very good, but we get a lot of character development for characters that presumably are all dead. And I don't know what the point is of showing me that just so you can then go, oh, we're back to the relevant story now. It is just really there as a buffer, and in some senses kind of used to cut the show into 2. It just doesn't feel necessary, and if you're being harsh and you're being critical of a show that I think is probably a strong 8, a 9 out of 10, is this episode really necessary? This feels like one where it's a kill your darling sort of situation, where it's probably one of the best episodes of the show, but I don't think it actually serves the show, and in some sense detracts from it. So it's a bit annoying in that sense, and also there is a specific character dynamic that is developed in this episode that then doesn't ever sort of come to the fray again. I also think the metaphors that the show employs are particularly strong, very strong. The Peter Pan one of the boy who never grew up wants friends, so he basically invents them or he kidnaps them, is a very strong one, and wasn't one I actually knew a lot about because I'm not really into Peter Pan. But once you get more information about it, it serves the show very well, and it becomes more relevant as the show goes on. I am somewhat interested in how, once you reach the end of the show, this first season of the show at least, how that story is fulfilled and the power dynamics has shifted. Are you then going to, in season 2, explore how power dynamics, once they've changed and the oppressed are the oppressor, does that then become an Animal Farm situation? Is that what we're going to see? I also think there's a metaphor in this season that I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but let's just say that, you know, an evil billionaire brings kids to an island where he can essentially use them and abuse them for his own joy, and he believes he's a kid, so he's not really doing anything wrong. Does there seem to be something that maybe this would resemble? So, overall, pretty excellent show. Some criticisms here and there. I am fully behind this show now. I can't wait for season 2, presumably in about 5 years, because that's how slow Noah Hawley works. I will have forgotten everything that happened by then, and Sydney Chandler will be about 35, so she probably can't even fucking act like a child anymore. Good performances, good direction, strong one vision. You know, Noah Hawley at the helm, actors who understand the vision, strong collaborators, so they're all driving in one way. The show has a consistency across the board, even when the episodes maybe feel a bit less relevant, or like maybe it's a buffer episode. There is still something cinematically going on that is interesting and is unique and is fun and entertaining to look at. I also haven't even mentioned the new monsters, which are probably some of the most interesting monsters since the original Xenomorph in Alien. Definitely more interesting and cool than the Engineers, which I just don't like at all. I can't wait to see more of this Alien franchise getting built out into this new era that we're in, of a seeming dominance of the horror franchise that we haven't seen from it since Alien and Aliens.